This is the MMA Brief Podcast, recapping the world of mixed martial arts every single week, with your host, Brandon Johansson.
Welcome back to the MMA Brief, recapping Bellator 175 from Chicago, Illinois, the rematch between King Mo Lawal and Quinton Rampage Jackson. Actually, some spectacular finishes on the card, which sometimes Bellator events tend to be all sizzle and not a lot of steak. All the early fights kind of suck. Usually the main event has a lot of attention towards it, and then sometimes it sucks for Bellator. However, this event was good. Couple really nice knockouts. Early on, Steve Cazzola knocked out Jake Roberts within 28 seconds of the first round. Pretty exciting finish. Sergey Karatanov bounced back from his 13-second knockout loss in his last fight and knocked out Chase Gormley in the first round with a sensational uppercut. And in the main event, King Mo Lawal defeated Quinton Rampage Jackson in the rematch by unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. First round, King Mo was able to land 2 takedowns on Rampage and use his game against the cage, really stifle most of Rampage's attacks. In the second round, Rampage was able to wobble King Mo, had him on ice skates for a second, put him on Queer Street, as they say. King Mo was able to survive the onslaught from Rampage in round 2, and in round 3, he did more of the same. In the first round, was able to get Rampage back against the cage, giving him not a lot of space to attack, looking for a takedown, threatening for takedowns quite often. Rampage looked very tired in the third round, came in at 253 pounds, the heaviest he's ever weighed in his mixed martial arts career. So maybe he'll regret that decision. I don't know if he'll try to get all the way back down to 205 pounds. But I do believe he's under contract with the UFC. He was in a very rare predicament. He was under contract with both Bellator and the UFC. He signed a deal with Bellator. They told him, reality shows, movie roles, you're going to be the man, pay-per-view buys, everything like that. They didn't deliver. So he's like, you guys didn't fulfill your contract? I'm a free agent. Signed with the UFC. Judge is like, yep, seems legit. You guys didn't do your part of the contract. Fight week, Rampage making his return to the UFC. Judge is like, I'm going to allow it. Rampage can fight this week. Bellator was trying to stop it hard. Ended up being able to fight, but then had to return back to Bellator to fulfill his fights he had remaining on their contract. So now he just fulfilled his last fight. I think he has to go back to the UFC because he signed that deal. Very rare predicament he got himself into. Well, I don't know if he got himself into it, but it's an interesting. I think he doesn't have a choice. He cannot retire. He cannot re-sign with Bellator. He can't explore free agency. He's got fights that he owes under contract to the UFC, and he had fights that he owed at Bellator apparently too. It was crazy. It'll probably never happen again, where one fighter is under contract with 2 promotions, especially with what happened with Quinton Rampage Jackson. Previewing UFC 210 from Buffalo, New York, this Saturday, April 8th, the rematch between Anthony Rumble Johnson and the champion, Daniel Cormier. Cormier was able to impose his will and his wrestling and cut Rumble on the ground with a nasty elbow. Almost broke his will, it seemed, at that point. Daniel Cormier was able to secure a rear naked choke finish and become the UFC light heavyweight champion. This rematch should be very interesting. It's a matchup of 2 top 205-pound fighters currently fighting, not named John Jones. And if DC is able to beat Anthony Rumble Johnson again for the second time, he really just solidifies that John Jones rematch, and he can get that one loss back of his career. John Jones comes off of suspension in July. Also fighting on the card, Gegard Mousasi and the former champion, Chris Weidman. a pivotal matchup in the 185-pound weight class. The winner definitely puts themselves right in line for a number one contender fight. Chris Weidman, obviously the former champion, and Gegard Mousasi has been on a tear. Middleweight picture is kind of cloudy right now, with Yoel Romero being the clear number one contender. Jacare Souza, number two guy behind him. They've already fought, and Yoel Romero won. And they've destroyed everyone else in their path. Yoel Romero knocked out Chris Weidman. Jacare submitted Gegard Mousasi. So the winner establishes themselves as a clear number three in that division, where you have GSP fighting for the title out of nowhere in an actually very competitive division. Also on the card, undefeated Cynthia Calvillo fights Pearl Gonzalez. Interesting matchup in the welterweight division. Thiago Alves returns to 170 pounds against Patrick Cote. And the last fight on the main card is Ill Will Brooks against Charles Oliveira, who's coming back up to 155 pounds. Prelims have fighters like Patrick Cummins, Miles Jury, Kamaru Usman, Caitlin Kuchagian, and the Team Alpha Male product, the undefeated Josh Emmett. Recently announced two former UFC champions in the 170-pound division have fights. It's been rumored, and I believe confirmed, Ruthless Robbie Lawler, the former welterweight champion, is going to fight Donald Cowboy Cerrone at UFC 213. And former 155-pound champion making his welterweight debut, Rafael Dos Anjos, will fight the former Strikeforce welterweight champion, Tariq Saffiedine, at UFC Fight Night 111. Very excited for UFC 210 this weekend. It's going down, the rematch between Rumble Johnson and DC Daniel Cormier for the light heavyweight title. Come back next week. We're going to recap UFC 210. Thanks for listening. Peace.